Hinton. Tonight, I am joined by some friends of mine in the music business. First, Caren Kelleher is founder and president of Gold Rush Vinyl in Austin, Texas. Cockrell is a singer-songwriter currently residing in Nashville, Tennessee, has a new album coming out next month. And Andy Freeman is a producer and engineer in Nashville with, what is the name of your studio? I'm sorry.
Studio Punch Up.
Studio Punch Up. Awesome. How are you guys doing?
Really well. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. So let's jump into, I haven't really talked to you guys. Caren, start with you. Like, we're what, like a month and a half, 2 months into this. How are things going for you? What is your day like? How's business?
I feel like every day is so different. So I'm down in Austin, and we're still, as a city, kind of tiptoeing back into life. But I don't know. I feel like for me, every day has been so different. Some days I'm like filled with rage and like need to go run around the block a couple times to get my energy out. Some days I feel tremendously optimistic. But honestly, like I'm a pretty introverted person, and I haven't minded having nothing on the calendar and not having to make up excuses for not wanting to go to things. So that's been actually pretty nice.
Cool. Thad, how are things for you, man?
It's been interesting in Nashville. About 2 weeks before the lockdown happened, we had really horrible tornadoes come through here and devastated big parts of the city. And so it really shut Nashville down for the better part of 2 weeks. And just when it was about getting on track, the third week, this lockdown happens. So, it's been an interesting beginning of the year. I'm doing well. I had surgery on my elbow about 3 weeks ago. And it was something that was already scheduled. I had a bicep muscle tear off my elbow. And so they went in and did surgery, and it's kind of a good time for it because there's not a whole lot to do right now. And when I walked into the hospital, I was worried, I was concerned, but I walked in and I was the only person in the waiting room. I was one of 4 surgeries that they did all day. And I was like, this is definitely the time to do it, as opposed to 6 weeks from now, whenever they open everything back up and there's, 200 or 100 surgeries done in a day or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, it's just getting through it like everyone else, and, staying fairly creative, really. A lot. I feel songs coming to me in a way that I've not felt in quite some time. So, yeah.
Awesome. Andy, you holed up there in the studio?
I'm holed up here in the studio like the other 364 days of the year. Yeah, life hasn't changed that much. But it is weird knowing that I can't go out with a band and have drinks or something like that. It's the fact that piece is missing out there somewhere, changes the mood and changes the vibe. Mm-hmm. But day to day, I'm just mixing a bunch of records that I tracked right before this coronavirus hit. So, and yeah, the tornado thing has also been strange because it feels like it's been a longer lockdown somehow in Nashville.
Yeah. So far for your business, Andy, what sort of changes are you seeing? What does that look like so far?
Well, it might be a little bit of a disappointing answer, but I haven't seen a ton. And from talking to people, recorded music hasn't seen a ton of change. It was already undergoing serious change with streaming and everything like that. So that's intensified, of course. I haven't had any, large gospel sessions with 15 people over here like I normally do, of course. But other than that, there's 2 phases to what I do. There's the producing and then there's the mixing phase. And right now I'm in the mixing, and it can just be me and speakers. So a little bit of a disappointing answer, but right now it's kind of same old. The future,
So-
however, will be different.
Do you have any plans to have any musicians come into the studio anytime in the near future?
I'm fine with it. I'm kind of open for business, but it depends on what they're comfortable with. And as a lot of these records that I'm mixing get to the completion stage, I'm doing one and the band's like, oh, we forgot to do that background vocal and we really want to do it, but it's coronavirus. So they're kind of waiting to draw straws to see who will be the guy that comes in and knocks it out. I love bands.
Caren, how are things changing at all for you, or are you seeing something similar to Andy in that it's kind of
Oh
staying the
no,
course?
we've been on a roller coaster, and I think for
Mm.
me too, like I am in the music industry still, but I'm also an American manufacturer, and
Yeah.
I own my business, and so a lot of my time has now been spent trying to navigate the mess of these government relief programs and lobbying with city council about how important it is that we be able to keep manufacturing records. I think one thing that hit us hard was South by Southwest cancellation. That's a huge, huge moment for my business. It's when all of our clients come to town. And because we press so many records for Austin bands, I feel like we felt the pinch of this probably similar to Nashville, like ahead of the rest of the country. People scared about what to do with their money and where to put it. But, one thing that we've been trying to encourage people with is, with touring on hold for now, festivals on hold indefinitely, vinyl is really the only economic engine a lot of musicians can have to get cashed quickly, given how long it takes royalty statements from Spotify to hit bank accounts. And that can hold me accountable on that if that's changed. But I think that, it's hard. It's really, really hard. We saw our sales go down 75% last month after some really gangbuster months. So I feel like we're starting to see it recover, and we're starting to get people saying they're going to press their vinyl. But I think there's just a general nervousness around cash and when's the next time we're going to get a paycheck as a musician to pay for this vinyl. So every day is a bit different.
Yeah. So Thad, I don't think you've been touring recently. What are things looking like for you? Both from I know you've got an album coming out. So for you, it's probably thinking about, writing music or getting out, supporting the new album. What are things looking like for you?
Well, it's really interesting. This album that I have has been done for over a year and a half. And it's been pushed back by the label because there was albums ahead of it, that they were already in line to release. And so, this happens, and what it really does is it takes a lot of opportunity, or at least it takes the normal thing that you do, and like they're going to radio with the single yesterday, but I can't do a radio tour. You can't tour behind it, and so I think we're all going to have to get really, really crafty and figure out some different ways to market and promote this record. And it's interesting. My dear friend, who's also my lawyer, Jeff Colvin, he said, it's going to be interesting during this time. Labels are actually going to have to get good at what they're supposed to, at what they say they're supposed to be good at, instead of relying on the artist to go tour and to go do all the work. And basically, they depend heavily on the artist. They're going to have to actually figure out how to do their jobs. And, that's coming from somebody that is a veteran. I don't know if he wanted to quote me, or if he wanted me to quote him. I think he wouldn't mind. A veteran attorney of the music industry who's widely, respected. So it's really changed kind of everything for me, in some ways. And I think in other ways, it allows me as a creative to go and create opportunity in a different direction too.
Hmm. So Caren, I know you've been in the business for quite a while in a number of different places. Are there some things that Thad's talking about that kind of ring true with you as far as kind of, you know, how music is being promoted, what labels are doing? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think especially in the past couple years, there's the art of like marketing and A&R has really gone away in favor of so much data. Like if albums from where, and in my past life where I saw this was at Google Music and Google Play, where I was on the launch team for those products. And what we were hearing from the labels is they were looking so much at the data to decide if they were going to invest more in a campaign or not. Like it didn't have as much conversation about the creative vision of the artist or the moment in time and culture. And you know, I stopped seeing people take as much risk with what they were signing and putting out there, and instead like holding on to the, like clutching the data saying, well, the analytics say this is going to be a hit, so we can feel confident putting money behind it. And when you can't tour as much and things like that, I think what I hope happens is there's a moment where people listen more to the music and find a moment in culture right now to put great work out into the world, and not just based on whatever the blogosphere or Spotify charts or anything like that say. And it is, I think that's right. It's going to make people do their jobs instead of just leaning on these machines that they've been dumping music into and watching it churn for so long.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you say that. It's like when we reduce it to, I'm not saying that those songs can't be hits, but when you reduce it to all data, like songs that are data driven in the sense of you hear it once and it becomes a hit, all of a sudden you only have one kind of hit on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns it into a very uninteresting playlist because there's nothing in it of a slow burn nature, or there's nothing in it that allows you to, like, the listener to walk towards it. It's so like in your ear, or it's so over the top that it kind of imposes itself on the listener as opposed to giving space for, you know, something to happen. So yeah, it's I know they do that. I just find it really interesting because there's I think a lot of examples of songs and albums that have done really well, and it just took a long time.
Yep. And I think part of it too that I've noticed in the past couple of years is people, as the recording music industry has been shrinking and jobs have been harder to come by, anecdotally what I've heard from people is they don't want to be the one to stick their neck out on something that doesn't have a clear path to success, because your job might be gone. It's so much easier to justify letting people go if you're wrong about something, and it's caused people on the industry side at least to play it too safe sometimes with what it's picking, because they don't want to be the one proven wrong.
Right.
How does streaming kind of fit into where the business has gone, and maybe how it's devalued the music? Andy, do you see that?
Streaming devaluing the music. In the sense that it spoils everyone for choice. Yeah. In the sense that it goes right past you. I mean, we've had a deluge of releases for years and years, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands, and streaming really didn't change that, but it hung a lantern on it for sure. So even a casual music fan knows there's a zillion things that coming out at them all the time in a big fire hose. I've been thinking about, as this lockdown continues, that there is a moment, maybe I'm an optimist, but I think we're entering a moment where people are hungry for music, you know, and before it was, oh, I want this kind of music. Oh, I only listen to this, or I follow these two artists. But I think the more people go stir crazy, the more they're willing to listen to new things, particularly as soon as things open up. You know, I know most people most of my friends who are not in the business are going to go straight to the nearest patio they can find and throw money at a person with an acoustic guitar. And so there's kind of a moment there for old-fashioned entertainment, and therefore
I agree so much, Andy.
for good artists to shine.
I actually think it's going to change the kind of music that's going to be popular. I think singer-songwriter, like exactly what you said, a dude with a guitar and a song is going to come back. I think rock and roll is going to come back, like rock and roll. Like it's gonna, like it is, just because I think there's such a need and a desire for human connection and music that you can trust, and I think we're connected by our weaknesses and not our strengths. And I think every time you hit auto tune on a vocal, you're erasing trust.
Yeah.
You know, you're just erasing trust.
And people can hear that. Human beings
can hear it.
People can hear that people know. They may like that pop song, but they know jolly well that it was made in a lab. And that there's just no time for that. I think there's going to be no time for that anymore, as people want to connect with other human beings through music.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with a buddy of mine, Ian Fitchick, who 2 years ago won a Grammy for Album of the Year. He produced Casey Musgrave's song, and I sent him a song idea, and it was there was nothing clever about it. It was a real song, and there was like weight to it, and he was like, yeah, he's like, with everything going on in the world today, I have no stomach to make anything other than something that matters and that's important and speaking to what's going on. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's a good time. I mean, Ian's and he's always been a music first person, but cash, hey, right, cash,
bring on the music. Love it.
But I think when you have that kind of success, you're given opportunities to do a lot of music that you might not otherwise had ever had access to making for one reason or another, and you end up doing it. And, so I think it's great that somebody like Ian's super interested in making music that matters, and that's important. I say all that to say I agree with you, Andy.
Well, I love that your dog's named Cash.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh.
But yeah, bring back my dog's named Elvis, so they met.
Oh really?
Yeah, man. Bring back the humanity.
For sure.
Andy, when you're in the studio with artists, do they ask you to clean it up with auto tune and things, or are you not the kinds of artists you get to choose to work with?
Yeah, that's generally not. Every now and then I'll have an artist demand that I tune them really hard, which is just strange to me. I don't really, but that's just stuff I mix, but they have to ask. But for production stuff, it's my version of auto tune is do it again. And if you're not feeling it, or if you got a frog in your throat, then we come back tomorrow and we hit it when you're fresh, because again, humans are amazing at hearing through a microphone to someone's emotion. It's supernatural. It's crazy, but they're so good at it, and anybody can do it. Even casual music fans know what an artist is feeling. I don't understand it, but it's true.
So Andy, Thad and I were having a conversation a week or so ago about some of these ideas around, there's the intuitive stuff that those of us who are not in the business, who just casually listen to music, who enjoy music, and that we may catch that. But I suspect there's things that you do on the engineering side to bring that out. What does that look like to bring out that kind of authentic voice of an artist?
I try to get an artist to a point where I can tell that what they're doing is deliberate. Authentic is kind of, was Bowie authentic? He was putting on costumes. It's a different kind of thing. So I try to use the word deliberate. And sometimes to put a person in that place, and I know that sounds mildly or perhaps severely sociopathic, but to put somebody in that place is just to, sometimes it's the lighting in the room. Sometimes it's, I was working with an artist a few years ago, and it was a song about divorce. And it was just about, we just talked about people we'd known who had gotten divorced, about her parents getting divorced, talked about people we know getting divorced for like an hour. And that just got the artist in a state where they were ready to deliver that. And it had some real power behind it. There's a lot of what I do that is the, you know, laying on the couch, stroking my beard, tell me about your mother, you know, kind of psychiatrist sort of thing. But it's all done with intent, and it's all done to get someone to communicate a deliberate, passionate emotion through all this technology and wires.
So I want to talk a little bit further about, we talked a little bit about, live music and how people want that connection. And I know, Caren, you brought up, I still remember when South by Southwest was canceled, because it was kind of a precursor to kind of where things were going. And I think people were stunned at the time, like, is this really happening? And in retrospect, it's like, wow, they made a great decision. What does it look like to each of you guys of going back to venues and having live music, and how does that change? How does it not change? Caren, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, I feel like I owe a lot of my friends an apology, because for years I've been complaining when I had to go to a concert for work or had to go to a festival. And now I'm like, I miss it so much. I miss being around. And part of why I got out of music tech too was I was tired of being confined to a screen. I liked the idea of being out and about at shows, making real tangible products. I hope that people realize what they missed and go out and spend their money in venues, seeing live music, and don't take that for granted. I am worried that it's going to be a long while before we get back to a place where we can stand comfortably near each other. Right after South by was canceled, they had the Austin Music Awards here in town, and it was the last real show before any shutdowns happened. And even then, all of us were kind of nervous to get too close. There was so much space between people, and it just felt awkward. So I hope that when we do come back together, people like really want to be there and be engaged and watch the show. And I'm just worried it's going to take some time, and that the venue caps, that they'll probably, a room that used to be 300 cap will probably be 100 cap for a long time, to make it a little safer. But I really miss it. I miss festivals especially, and I don't see those coming back anytime soon.
Do you think the price of tickets will go up because of that?
I guess it's going to have to, right? Because your guarantees of what you're going to pay the artist or should pay the artist will make a difference. And the supply and demand problem. I mean, if it's priced correctly, but I hope so. I want to see more musicians be able to make a living wage while touring, despite all of these things. Here in Austin, they've been really debating what they do about, should they supplement the income of the musicians, because the venues are going to have lower caps, like what kind of things might happen there. But have you talked to your agent at all about that, or?
No, my agent is actually there in Austin. I've not talked to him about that in particular. No, but yeah, I mean, I've thought about that. I'm like, well, so, if a ticket is $15 for some band that's coming in town, that would, sell 300 or 400 tickets. If they can only sell 100 tickets, are there people that are going to be able to spend $45 for a ticket?
You pick probably one ticket instead of four, right? That's the consequence too, is maybe you spend more money on one act instead of going to see lots of new things or developing things. And
right.
I'm worried too, like here in Texas, we've been slowly opening up, and a lot of business owners I know here in town who own restaurants and bars and venues have been like, nope, we're not opening, even with 25%, because it still costs us 100% of the cost to run a venue and to staff it and to have the lights on, and cleaning costs now are going to be so much higher. So then it just raises expenses. So how is this going to work out? And we'll just keep it. And they said, no, thanks. We'll just keep doing takeout for a while. So I'm glad I'm not making those decisions, but.
What do you guys, I know over the past probably month, there's been more and more artists that are coming online and doing some, some live performances, and it's certainly not the same. What do you guys see that continuing for a while? Where do you see that going? Is that something here to stay potentially?
One artist I work a lot with called me up about a month into this, where we were 90% done with his record before, when he was here, the tornadoes hit, almost killed him because he was in Three Crow Bar in East Nashville. Shout out to them, because the bartender saved everyone's life by telling them to go to the bathrooms right now. And then the drummer had an emergency appendectomy the next day. So that record got put on hold. But we're 90% done. And he goes back and the lockdown happens. He starts playing a lot of streaming shows, just him and a laptop and Instagram. And he calls me up a month into it and goes, hey, I've been making a lot of money doing this. I'd love to jump back in the studio and maybe try some other stuff out. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. So I think those who have figured it out, and I'm not an artist, I don't know what he's doing, I wouldn't be able to make money like that. But for those who have figured it out, I think it's going to stay in some form. I could see a future where you go play a gig and then, as a friend of mine says, swallowing your ego, you go play a gig somewhere locally just to get some cash flow, doing some covers, and then say, hey, I'm live streaming my original stuff on Tuesday night. Here's the address. I could see those things working hand in hand as things start to move again and open up.
Is it potentially a way, kind of in the long term, to here and there make additional connections with fans?
I think music people are always going to be music people. There's always going to be fan. I mean, everyone on this call is a music fan. We listen to the whole record. We have our favorites that move us deeply, and the amount of people that's true of may change, but the intensity of the citizens of the music fandom world, that will only increase. And if I have a chance to be almost one-on-one in a streaming situation with my favorite artist, then I'll, Trent Reznor figured this out years ago, charge a premium. If it's a fan that wants to go deep, charge a premium and they will pay. And I think we're going back to that if we haven't left it already. There's some people I would pay for and some I wouldn't.
I'm having a little bit of like Zoom and Facebook Live fatigue at this point. I feel like I get so many invitations to shows, which is amazing. I'm so glad people are being creative, but I also, I feel like suffering for being on screens too much all day long. And then when I get home at night, where it's kind of lessening for me a lot of the excitement about it. Although I have seen a couple of bands doing really well by having consistent shows, like every Friday at X time, and picking up fans along the way, being able to play some of those deeper cuts or try new songs out. But I'm just generally tired of looking at screens all day.
Yeah,
you get used to it.
So let's talk about maybe some of the things, and I think you guys may have some ideas about this. Is we're at this place where really kind of everything in our society is at a pause, and we're probably all having time to reflect, and you guys are probably having time to reflect upon, not just your individual situation, but the music industry as a whole. And I'm curious to know what you guys see as some things that you just as soon actually not go back to the normal as it has been, and that you see maybe there's some new ways forward that would be healthier, better for the business, better for the average person. Maybe what are some of those new normals? Thad, have you given some thought to what that looks like?
What's the question again? The new normals of
the music business. Just consider we have a blank slate here. So we don't have to go back to the way things had been. So I'm
Oh,
wondering if what your thoughts on going forward. What would be a better way to go about the music industry? And maybe that's in one little area, maybe it's more broadly.
um, you know, I wish we had um, outlets that were talking about music more. Yeah, I wish we had um, big outlets talking about music. Um, I mean, I would say that the heads of the major labels and really big indies have completely fallen asleep um, at the job and have really only worried about their bottom line for the here and now, and they haven't thought about building an infrastructure to create connection um, through education, people talking passionately about music. Uh, yeah, I think they've done an incredibly horrible job at that, and I think that's where sports have completely crushed it.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think about this a lot. You know, I
So
mean,
that
I in 2012 I started a band called Leagues, and it was basically an outlet for like these more pop driven songs that I had. And so, you know, I started a band, but it's me. You know, like I'm writing the song. I'm going to share the songwriting credit, whether I write it by myself or not, because my thought is if it goes really well, there's enough to go around, and if it doesn't go well, I'm holding an empty bag, right? And I think people play differently whenever I can pay a musician, I can pay the best musician to come in and play on my record, and I could say, I'm going to pay you, what's your daily rate? And he would say $200. I'm like, I'm going to pay you $1,000. I bet I would get something good. But if I said, hey, if you come up with something really incredible, something signature, like I worked really hard on this, I know that you have your own gifting, and you're going to have a part of this uh, copyright for the rest of your life, he's going to play differently. He's just going to, because I think when you're writing your future into something, you do everything differently because there's ownership. There's no way you can't, right? And so, but the point being is when I started Leagues, I like hired a team around me. I basically ran a label. I ran a label. I managed it for the most part. And one of the things that I realized when I was in it, in a way that I hadn't realized before, is I'm like, I would say the biggest problem in music is we have a value problem. We have a value problem. And value comes from there's a different ways to create value, but one of the main ways is scarcity, right? So scarcity creates value, but also publicity creates value. There's different ways to create value, and content on itself does not necessarily create value. But the publicity of that content and the promotion of that content is what creates value, right? So just that we have a bunch of music going out there doesn't mean that the great collective of artists that the value is being lifted. In some ways, because it isn't, and there's more music, the value of it keeps going further and further. So yeah, I think that there has to be a new way forward. And you know, I daydream about it a lot.
For anybody that hasn't listened to Leagues, please do yourself the favor.
Thanks, Andy. I
My
appreciate
goodness.
I mean, could you have walked into an Apple store or any other number of places and not heard Leagues in the past few years?
it. It was special. We had a really fun time. We have an unreleased album that's finished. mixed and ready to go. So
Oh,
Got a lot of time on their hands right now for
we
listening
are
to music.
breaking
Right.
news on Goodwill Hinton right now.
It is, I mean, nobody knows it, but we do. It's completely, Vance Powell mixed it. It's yeah.
Mm.
So Caren, give me your thoughts on kind of maybe what you'd like to see as some new normals in the business.
Yeah, that just got me thinking about one thing I haven't missed at all, and that's the glorification of celebrity culture. In fact, like watching even that, like watching all of these, at-home performances with these very big stars in their mansions has just been like very tone deaf almost to me. I'm like, oh, it's just not the time to be, showing off your
tone deaf is a good way to put it. I think even like signing people to millions and millions of dollars in sports in front of everybody is kind of tone deaf too.
Yeah, it is. And I haven't missed like, I'm such an old person. I only read the news. I read a hard copy of the newspaper every day and I listen to NPR. That's it. I don't watch the new TV news or anything. So I don't get any of that like Kardashian kind of culture in my life often. But even the absence of that, or not even thinking about keeping up with things like that, I'm hearing that more from friends too. They're like, I've been rediscovering my parents' vinyl collection, or we just started a vinyl club at Gold Rush where we send 2 records a month that you don't know what you're getting, and people loved it because they're like,
that's
oh,
awesome.
Yeah, all this time I'll make sense, and like we trust that you pick something good for us, and that's cool. I hope that becomes more of the new normal, like people's willingness to kind of seek out something different. And especially, I think like Andy, you got me thinking about the authenticity piece too. That's not the right word for it, but I hope that we just see some really great songwriting come out of this time where people like really lay it out there, and that people respond back at that. I've always like been angry we have so many good songwriters in this generation and haven't had a cultural moment to really let a lot of that shine. And I hope I hope this gives that breathing room, I guess.
I love that, Caren. I'm with you.
One of the first things I remember, like my first encounters with the industry when I just started doing this, and this was like 16, 17 years ago, there was some guy, I forget his name, but he had a deal with Sony, and he sat in my studio, and he wasn't even working with me. It was just like it was just a safe space. I had an Xbox, it was a lounge. People used to hang out in there. And he walked down the hall of this big rehearsal studio, and he came into my lounge, and he just sat on the couch and he cried because he said, I've got 9 songs and Sony needs a 10th one, and I just don't have it in me. And it was, I'll never forget that moment. He was absolutely broken. And so I'm really encouraged, Thad, you said early on that you've got some songs coming because of all this. I mean, that's great to have the time to process without the pressure of, label demands and things like that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I probably took a good, between 2016 and 2017, 18, I wrote about 3 albums worth of stuff for leagues. I wrote probably 50 songs for my solo record. I wrote 10 songs with Joy Williams for her album that came out, and a few of them. Then I wrote basically a lot of about 8 or 10 songs with Jessie Balin for a family record that she made, and then some other friends just here and there, just one-offs here and there. But I was within the course of like 2.5 years, I was as tapped out could be. I just needed to shut the hell up, and read, and really, I think more importantly, just listen, and I went through a long season, about 1.5 years. I mean, Andy, I'm like, I don't know if I know how to write songs anymore. Like maybe I'm not the songwriter that, and at some point it's weird. It's like the water starts turning again, or starts flowing. But I'm in that space where, man, it's a bummer that my album is just now coming out.
Yeah, if you want
because
to
I'm
swap
like
songs on it,
I'm
you
ready
can.
to make another record that speaks to what's going on now. Like there's an energy, there's a real energy going on right now. And, you know, as an artist, it's our job to reflect it. Yeah.
Yeah. And guide people.
Absolutely.
Show
Guide
me,
people.
show me how to feel. Tell me how to feel.
Oh, yeah, man. And I think show me how to feel, I think, is probably what I resonate with the most, because I mean, for me, growing up as a kid, I grew up in a crazy family that was completely emotionally disconnected. And so the only outlet for any emotions for me, or to show me how to feel, was music growing up. Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
I was just remembering on the way over here, my friend texted me and said, "Oh my gosh, I just heard a COVID-19 song on the radio. And I guess it's a Luke Combs song called 6 Feet Apart." And she's like, "That's amazing. They got it done that fast and got it out the door." But, you know, she said I'll probably play it again. And I don't like mainstream country.
Right. What are some songs that you guys have been like that you weren't expecting, that you listen to and you're like, wow, that's unbelievable?
During this time or just generally?
Just in the last, I don't know, during this time, yeah.
I put on Bitches Brew, and the manic energy of it just connected with everything going on in a way that it hadn't before.
I watched the documentary during all of this.
Oh, yeah, I need to see that. Yeah, people keep telling me about that.
It's really good. It talks about that what was happening there. And then I listened to the album, and it's, yeah.
I've actually been listening to a ton of 1950s and 60s pop music, like sock hop kind of music, just because it's so upbeat and I need that to like counteract my day some days. So
yeah,
that's been a lot of, and digging back into, the like older songs, and just something different. Usually I get all my music recommendations for what's being passed through the factory. We press like 4 records a day. So usually my staff will leave them at my desk, and then I'll listen to the records every day. But because it's been so slow, I feel like my pipeline for new music has decreased a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I jump in for a second? You want to listen to more upbeat things. Well, there's that Rolling Stone piece that's going around right now about how America, or everywhere, I suppose, is going to experience a flood of upbeat, happy music. And I had some artists tweet that article and say, "Well, they're not going to get it from me, damn it." But what do you guys think about that? Is that forthcoming?
So this is not going to come as a surprise to anybody who knows me, but I've been listening to a lot of Tame Impala. And what's interesting is the newest album, The Slow Rush, in some ways was the perfect, I know it came out a little beforehand, but it is, you know, if you look at the progression of Kevin Parker's music, and he kind of had this introspection and then kind of moved to a stage with Currents where there was a lot of kind of feeling out emotions and regret and kind of looking back. And this new album, there's a real sense of optimism. And so it's really, I mean, his music connects to me anyways, but it's been interesting timing listening to that.
I'm sure the major labels are very hungry to put out positive, upbeat songs that will also grace commercials and, go along with all of that. I don't know. I really just genuinely, like, I think back to like one of my favorite songwriters is Josh Ritter, and so many of his songs I felt like were the right song in the wrong time. Like any other era, they might have had more kind of like cultural impact in the way that like Bob Dylan kind of processed music did, or anything like that. I'm hoping that I don't know. I kind of want to sit with, as much as I'm saying I'm listening to the stock hop music and stuff, it's mostly so I can get through my day and my staff isn't like, are you okay? A lot of depressing stuff, Caren. Are you good?
Yeah. Put the Elliott Smith down.
Yeah. I had a week or two of a lot of Elliott Smith, a lot of Irish singer-songwriters, very deep, morose. I let myself sit with that. But music is so interesting because music can change your mood so much, and it has a time and place. And for me, having a hard time expressing my feelings sometimes, like music does that for me. And it's been nice to have a mix of it. And sometimes you do need that optimistic music just to keep yourself on the road and driving correctly and not drive into the side rail. But
so I will say, and that didn't pay me to say this, I've been listening to your new album quite a bit, Thad, and there's a sense of, it's not leagues, but I'm like, man, it is everything I wanted to hear from you on your next album. Talk a little bit about, like, thematically that album, what it looks like, what people can look forward to when that comes out.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I've never worked on anything as hard, and I think I lost my mind about 50 times in the process of making it. And I think every time we lose our mind, we just find a better one to replace it, hopefully. That's like, so maybe like the goal is to lose your mind. It's like, you go fucking and I started that album here with some friends, and I spent a bunch of money trying to hire some people that helped me make records in the past, and man, it wasn't working. It wasn't working. So I ran out of money, and I started recording. I called up my buddy Logan Matheny, and I said, "Hey, Logan, first of all, I don't have any money to pay you, but if I did, I still don't want to pay you because I need to feel like I'm building a fort in the backyard with my buddy. So will you just let me come over and record? And I need to do it with you. Like, I just need to feel like I'm doing something special with my friend for no other reason. We're just like, I need it. Like, I need this. Like, I'm like really depressed that I just spent all this money and I don't know what to do with, like, where I'm not going to release these songs." So we went in there and we recorded a song that I wrote for my solo album, but on the last Leagues album, Jeremy heard it and he was like, I think that's a League song. And I think, the idea is always to record the best song. So we recorded Slow and Steady. And on the Leagues album, it's called, I think it's called Walking to a City. Yeah. And we recorded both those songs. And while I liked them, they're not how I heard them. So I started over, and I was going through an incredibly, like, really difficult time. Personally, it was a really, really hard time. And there was some losses in my life. I lost my grandmother at the age of 104, and you think because she's 104, it makes it easy, but or easier, and it did not. And so I was going for a walk, and I was thinking about this album, trying to think of an idea that would be big enough for me to hang like a bunch of songs underneath. It would be a canopy for this space for songs. And because I think the idea is, like, nobody has time for an album anymore, and for me, I've kind of made, I look for the rooms that people are walking out of, and I walk in. and so, it's like, well, people aren't making albums anymore. Well, then let's go fucking make an album. Then I think that maybe that's the time to do it. Because I think we all agree that the most of the time, the bigger population is always wrong. And I think that we all have to be showed what we want, to your point, Andy. And so I was on a walk, and the thought that struck me was this idea: if in case you feel the same. And I just got like, I was like, oh my God. And I love it because it holds space for me, but it creates space for someone else too, you know? And I knew it was the name of the album. And so, you know, I didn't know what to do with it. I wrote it. I ended up writing a song. I was afraid. I didn't know. I thought I might screw it up, but I had about 3 or 4 songs that were started, and a friend of mine had been playing these songs. Becca Mancari, she's a great artist here locally, and she would come over to write songs with me, but she never wrote songs. She just wanted to record, do like voice recordings of her singing harmonies to my songs, you know, which is like really sweet, you know? And so I didn't know it. Unbeknownst to me, she's playing them for Brittany Howard. And I laying on the couch one night watching TV, and I got a text from Becca's phone, and it said, "Hey, this is Brittany. I hijacked Becca's phone. I'm in love with you." And I'm like, well, the feeling is mutual. And I said, "Thank you so much for your voice and your spirit. I hope we get to have drinks someday soon. When we do, give me 5 minutes to gush, then we'll carry on being normal friends." And she came over like 30 minutes later. They came over to my house, and I'm making mezcal margaritas for us till like 4:30 in the morning. And Becca's like, "Play these songs for Brittany that you started." And I played them for Britt, and Britt's like, "I don't like shit. I love this. What are you doing with it?" I'm like, "I have no idea." She came back over a couple days later, and I'd sent her the songs, and I'm making breakfast for us, and she's singing my song back to me, and I'm like, "What?
Wow.
What the hell is going on?" And so she sent them to her manager and the head of her label at ATO, and I've been working with them since. About a month prior to that, I had sent an email to Blake Mills's manager, because I knew that asking to like produce an album is a big ask. That takes a lot of time, but you know, maybe a song or two, you know, maybe you can get a yes. I'm just finding a way to get a yes, you know? And I didn't even get a response. Well, you know, Kevin Morris, my manager, who just started working with me, was like, "Oh, I know that whole crew." And so I'd already planned to drive out to LA for 4 to 6 weeks. I didn't know why. I just knew I was supposed to go. And I drove out there and ended up meeting Blake Mills and had breakfast about him producing. And while I didn't think it was the right fit, I was like, I just wish that he'd play guitar on the record, but he doesn't do that anymore. Well, I met this guy named Tony Berg, who produced like the Phoebe Bridgers record, and he's just done so much over time. I mean, I could give a 30-minute talk on just Tony Berg. Like, my God, he signed back to Geffen. He produced Peter Gabriel records. I mean, it's like wild. He found Fiona Apple and hired John Bryan to produce the first records. And I met Tony, and I kind of knew pretty instantly that he was the person to help me. And I didn't know it, but Blake was like a son to him. And Blake ended up playing guitar on the record, and it was a crazy cast. If you would have told me a year earlier that I would have been out in LA making an album and having Sean Everett mix the album, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have told you I got the wrong email. I mean, I would have wanted to, but but even you know, so the name of the album is If and Case You Feel the Same. It opens up with first verse and chorus of If and Case You Feel the Same. You hear the whole album, and then you hear the last verse and chorus of If and Case You Feel the Same. So it's like a real, you know, thing. Awesome. And it has everything on it. There's like gospel songs on it. There's like rock and roll. It's almost a mixtape. There's like R&B song. There's a song that I've kind of had in my back pocket. If the crazy chances that I ever got in the room with Beyonce, you know, I was like, all I have to do is just tell her the title of this song, and she'd be like, "Oh yeah, we're definitely writing that." but I had the thought, which is very like Diana Ross and the Supremes, like, but the title of it is "You Didn't Break My Heart, You Broke Yours," you know, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just put it on my record. So there's all, it like runs the whole gamut, sound wise. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to, I've heard it, and I can't wait for other people to hear it as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So a few more minutes. Caren, tell our audience more about Gold Rush Vinyl, what you guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I moved to Austin 3 years ago. I traded in my job at Google to open a vinyl record factory, and rightfully a lot of people were concerned, like, why are you doing that? But you know, one of the nice things, while my sister and I, while I was at Google, my sister actually worked at Google as well. We had a side hobby managing bands. Andy and I got to work together on some projects, and worked with a couple bands for a few years. And I was seeing how many young fans at these shows were asking for vinyl. And I thought, that's strange. And I'd ask some of the fans at the merch table, like, do you even own a record player? And a lot of them would say, no, I just want the band to sign it, or I want to own something from this artist I like so much. And then one of the artists I was working with, the Family Crest, suddenly kind of had a big hit. Bob Boylan on NPR said, this is one of my favorite new bands of the year. They got offered a big tour. It's the kind of moment you're waiting for when you're a developing artist. But, you know, the opening pay rate for tours like that for, you know, the supporting band is very small. So that tour was really only going to work if we had merch to sell. And so I went to get the vinyl made, and I got told, not going to happen. No way you'll get it in time. And I think we had like 3 months notice on this tour. No way you're going to get it. And I said, well, can you do a rush order? Like, I'll pay 3 times more just to get the records. And I kept getting told by everyone, you don't understand, vinyl is just like this craft. It's so hard. Like, there is no such thing as a rush order. And so we got the records like 8 months later, and one of the tracks was half cut off. I mean, it was just a terrible, terrible experience. And so I was hearing that more and more from artists, and I was kind of done with my time at Google. I had accomplished everything I wanted to do there. But I was giving a presentation to the company, and one of the slides I had to show was why it is that artists get upset about YouTube royalty rates. And the infographic I showed said the average American band to make minimum wage can either sell 100 vinyl records or have 2.5 million YouTube streams. And I thought, 100 vinyl records, that's crazy. And it got really fascinated with vinyl and started looking into it, and found that it really hadn't changed that much in 40 years. A lot of the plants that survived vinyl's downturn in the 90s and 2000s were now completely backed up, you know, 4 to 6 month turnaround times, 8 months in my case. And just on a whim one day, I put together a business plan and walked it into a bank. I'm not making this up. This is really what I did. Walked it into a bank, and I said, could I get a loan for something like this? And had a big meeting downtown at Wells Fargo headquarters in San Francisco. And they committed $500,000 for me to go build a vinyl factory. So
wow.
I called my family, and I was like, I think I have to build a factory.
That is awesome.
Yeah. It costs a lot more than that, as it turned out. So
I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah, so we focus on independent artists mostly. We actually press a good amount of stuff for ATO too, but I don't think we're pressing your stat, which is, we'll have to talk about that.
Bummer.
But it's been really fun to make things again, and to be part of so many stories. We have, especially because we're in Austin, musicians will come right into the factory, pick up their records. They save hundreds of dollars in shipping when they do that too. But then they can bring their families in. We have so many musicians that bring their kids in to watch the vinyl being made, or it's just really special to be part of the artistic journey in that way. And to do something different. It's so hard though. Oh my gosh, if I own a forklift now, everybody. I know how to drive a forklift. It's just it's very hard owning a physical business. I think this pandemic we're in has been tricky with that.
Right.
But that's what I do at Gold Rush Vinyl.
Awesome. Andy, why don't you wrap us up? Talk about Studio Punch Up. Tell us about the business, maybe some of the artists you've been working with lately.
Well, Studio Punch Up, I wanted a dorky name that had the .com available, and I found one. So there you go. Yeah, I'm doing. I kind of have two worlds going on. I'm doing a lot of work with independent artists, and I have a little fly by night record label. And sometimes I'll sign people to that and make a record for them and shop it around, and that's actually worked a couple of times. Um, and then I've got the that's like Americana indie stuff. Live bands, I can track a live band at my place, which is great. Um, and then I've got this other world where I'm doing a ton of R&B gospel, and that is amazing. I love it to death. Um, it's amazing working with
Like
these killer
who?
players. And
I love that stuff. Like who are the, I don't want to interrupt. Who are the, I'm just curious.
oh well, there's a guy named Guitar Phil in town, and he produces and I mix and engineer. And there for a long time, I mean, pre-coronavirus, there was a parade of people coming in here, all kinds of just top gospel guys and singers and women. And it like, and it's always like, oh man, Andy, you made them sound great. I'm like, I didn't do anything. They're just amazing. Like I'm just a fan today. That stuff is thrilling to work on. Absolutely thrilling. So we're, there's also some talk of uniting the two worlds. There's a few people I know that are interested in Black Americana artists, and that is extremely exciting. So, because I think the world needs that badly, for a whole host of reasons that we.
I mean, if there's anything that's Americana, it started in the Black community.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, to me, it just makes linguistical sense, if that's a word. We're just doubling down on the actual definition of American music. I mean, come on, Black music is American music in the 20th century. It's what owned. Okay, anyway, we'll have a coffee sometime. But yeah, it's very exciting to work with people who are combining indie and gospel, and indie and R&B and mandolin and rap and things like that. It's really interesting. One artist in particular.
I want to hear it.
We got to do a music swap after this.
Yeah, man.
Are you a fan of the T.L. Barrett and the children's choir, the Chicago Children's Choir, that gospel album?
Oh, I've heard of this. I haven't heard it though. Really? Okay. See, that's the look that Will gets on his face when I haven't heard it.
Really? Wow. Pastor T.L. Barrett and the youth for Christ choir.
Okay.
Oh my God, Andy. I'm so jealous you're going to hear this for the first time. You're not going to leave like a listening party. You're not going to leave your studio for an hour after. You won't be able to not keep listening. I'll tell you that much.
I'm into that.
Yeah.
Make it compelling. That's the goal.
Awesome. Yeah. Guys, man, I've really enjoyed this conversation. You guys have put a smile on my face. This has been like a great way to end a day for me. I really appreciate you guys giving of your time, sharing your thoughts on music. Hope you guys stay safe. Thank everyone for watching. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
good to see y'all.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Will.